A few weeks ago, it was actually during Passover, Becky and I went to the Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley. If you haven't been there, it's really a beautiful hilltop location. It was made even that much more beautiful by the rains because the hillsides were just verdant green and flowering, and it was really a pretty sight. We went to see the exhibit called Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away. It's the title of the exhibit. It was incredible and it was powerful. And I would say that apart from Yad Vashem in Jerusalem and the U.S. Holocaust Museum, it's probably one of the most comprehensive retrospectives on that horrific scar in the Earth's surface that is the death camp we call Auschwitz. And it provides an important historical retrospective on the circumstances and the conditions that birthed and sustained the camp, and how it was possible to carry out the murder of 1.5 million Jews over the course of several years. It was curated by the Holocaust scholar, the eminent Holocaust scholar from across the street, Michael Baron-Baum. And beyond the power of the exhibit, there are a number of additional aspects that added to its impact. First of all, it was in the Reagan Library, not exactly a Jewish landmark. Second, it was packed. And it wasn't a weekend, it was a Wednesday. So packed that it required timed entry. And finally, folks, it's Simi Valley, not exactly a Jewish promised land. And looking around, it was so clear that the vast majority of the people visiting were not Jewish. How did I know? You just know, right? You just know. Put all that together, the power of the exhibit, the location, the attendees, and it was really unforgettable. If you haven't been, I think it's still an open. Go, definitely go. Having said all of that, after reading an article in The Atlantic by the author Dara Horn, my eyes were open to a slightly different take on Holocaust memorials, on museums, on interfaith Holocaust ceremonies in general. The article is based on Dara Horn's book called People Love Dead Jews. Now, that intentionally shocking title, and she meant it to be shocking, points to a certain reality about significant Jewish landmarks, Jewish sites around the world. That most of them are for Jewish communities that no longer exist. I'm talking about memorials and museums, for Jewish communities that no longer exist. Whether they're Holocaust retrospectives or Holocaust memorials, or even some tourist sites. And Horn writes in her book about a city called Harbin in China, which, though now it's currently known for spectacular ice and light sculptures that it puts on, was in the first quarter of the 20th century a city of 100,000 Russians. And of those 100,000 Russians, 40,000 of them were Jews. They were displaced from Russia, and they created in this northern region of China a Russian city in the midst of China. So her point is that there's a strange attraction for sites of Jewish interest, so much that they become tourist meccas, drawing crowds, but they're devoid, even though they're dedicated to Jews, they're devoid of real live Jews. And they're mostly about dead Jews. They're reminiscent of tragedies or of abandonment, whether willful or forced. So Holocaust museums, unfortunately, and memorials too, sort of reflect that dead Jew appeal. And they often make an argument that at first appears really compelling, just like the Auschwitz exhibit in the Reagan Museum. But it's not without drawbacks. So consider that Auschwitz exhibit as an example. You walk through the halls, and Jews are presented as regular folks, just like everybody else. They had businesses. There are photos of Jewish couples posing on their wedding days. They look like anybody posing on a wedding day. They're Jewish businesses, no different from other businesses. And it makes the important point that the people killed at Auschwitz were like everybody else. They were Poles, they were Germans, they were Czechs, and so on. People who just happened to be Jewish. But that attempt to portray Jews as a different flavor of humanity, though of course true, doesn't fully describe what Jewishness actually is, who we are, and perhaps even why anti-Semitism persists. And in fact, and I'm convinced by Horn's argument, or I wouldn't be sharing it with you, it actually undermines the status of Jews in our world today. Let me explain. Because here's the thing. Jews are not like everybody else. I mean, yes, we are, but we're not. Because Jewish identity is truly unique. And many aspects of Judaism's exceptionality explain both the essential reason for Jewish survival over thousands of years and the reason that anti-Semites seize on aspects of that identity to go after us for all those thousands of years as well. The catalyst, if you will. So consider this. Judaism is not merely a religion. Now, we also speak a common language. All Catholics don't speak a common language. All Protestants don't speak a common language. But Jews have, as their foundational language, Hebrew. We have a homeland. Catholics don't have a homeland. Protestants don't have a homeland. And then when we move and live in different regions, we choose to live apart, wherever we found ourselves dwelling, not because we're antisocial, but because the rituals of religious identity often require Jews to live separately, to eat separately, different restaurants, different places to shop, different places to pray, obviously. Judaism isn't merely a nationality, though we are associated with a land and a nation. And we have a national homeland because we're a religion. And at our core are rituals and worship that connect us to Jews wherever they live, whether in Israel or outside of Israel, and whatever language they speak, whether Hebrew is their language, Yiddish or German or Persian or whatever. Judaism isn't merely a culture either. Though we share common practices and a language, those are cultural markers, we also, and we experience a year with cultural observances, if you will, those observances are also attached to a religious meaning, our identity as a religious people. And yet they can be, and they're often observed, in a quasi-secular manner. Where are they often most secular? Here's where it really breaks your brain. In the Jewish national homeland is where they're often most secular. Right? Figure that one out. Judaism isn't genetic, i.e., one can become a naturalized citizen of the Jewish people through conversion. And yet, in marriage creates unique Jewish genotypes. There are traceable through the generations. And there are uniquely Jewish diseases, Ashkenazi, Persian diseases. Choosing to become a Jew is more like becoming a citizen in some kind of a strange global identity, where one can keep one's national affiliation. You can stay French, Italian, American, but yet you add this other layer of identity, of citizenship, if you will, to your Americanism, which is also Jewish. And the convert gets this passport conversion that brings them into this whole spectrum of Jewish identity, culture, nationality, religion, all those things. So we really are unique, really unique. I can't think of another identity in existence today with such widespread influence that is similar. So we often call ourselves a people, but do we ever stop to think about what it means to call the Jews a people? So here's where that people love dead Jews issue comes in. Because, and this is important, there's not one Holocaust museum that captures that complexity. You could walk through a museum, you'd see pictures of Jews living, Jews dead, but does it really say how unique Jews are over the course of our history? It's because we transcend definitions of religion, of nationality, of culture, and genetics that somehow or another the anti-Semites have seized on that strange identity. And that culture, that identity encompasses all and yet redefines each of those parameters. So the anti-Semite finds fertile ground in that complexity. There's not one Holocaust museum that says to the would-be anti-Semite, or for that matter, the non-Jewish philo-Semite, Jews are like everybody else, and Jews are different from everybody else. Both of those things. And because of the Jewish unique path through history, because of the unique Jewish contribution to the world, and because we are, of course, above all, human like everybody else, like every other person on this planet, possessing both strengths of our humanity and, I have to admit, and you all know this, the weaknesses of our humanity. We've earned a place in this world, even as we've contributed immensely to it. And there's no museum that really captures both of those things. Maybe the Beit HaTfutzot in Israel, which is a museum to living Jews. Doesn't capture our commonalities with all humans, and it doesn't capture the differences that we embrace. And explains why both those aspects are worthy of respect, and Jews are worthy of respect and admiration and preservation and even celebration. So what needs to be said at every single Holocaust memorial, every single Holocaust museum, every single ceremony that recognizes the deaths from the Shoah, that were it not for this strange, unique, determined, inspired, and yes, imperfect people of the book, the world, as we've come to know it, with all the good and all that isn't so good, well, it wouldn't exist. What's missing from these worldwide exhibits of Jewish tragedy is quite simply gratitude. Gratitude, spoken through the voices of the people in these museums. Gratitude to this unusual minority, less than 0.1% of the world's population. This minority who have walked their unique path for 3,000 years and walked in such a way that the world is better because we've been a part of it.